Welcome back, Nerdy Sports audience, Nerdy Bunch audience. I know our boy Dave has put out a lot of podcasts lately talking about the Penguin and a lot of other shows coming up. Severance just started as well, Severance season 2. If you guys are into shows like that, he's going to have a lot of good reviews coming up. I definitely enjoyed the Penguin myself, but as my sweatshirt says, and if you see me and Scotty together, we are most likely talking about sports. And this is the time where it's the final four. We have the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills. Fourth time they're playing, at least in the Josh Allen, Patty Mahomes era. Patty's up 3-0. So let's start right there with the AFC. How do you feel about this matchup, Scotty?
Honestly, I think this is going to be a repeat. I think Chiefs win again. It'll be close game, like most of them are. Probably come down to the end. There'll probably be at least a small segment of fans that are going to blame referee, or maybe a
Uh,
larger say. But I'm not blaming you guys. I'm just saying what the fans will say.
yeah.
I think the Chiefs win. I think this Chiefs team has been honestly really disrespected this year.
Hmm.
I mean, they were you take out the final game because they lost that one. I don't want to say intentionally, but didn't try very hard.
Yeah,
They
well,
were,
yeah. The Broncos just destroyed them and they had no advantage.
yeah, they were close
31-15,
better.
which is their record, by the way. The best season they've had. Regular season, that is.
So you look at it, 15-1, which is what the regular season was in the NFL for basically forever,
Sure.
or my youth. And
Hmm.
that's only like a handful of teams have done 15-1, and normally those teams are like super heavy favorites. And they
Hmm.
spend 90% of the season not favorites.
Hmm.
Preseason it was the 49ers. Early season it starts off, I think it's still the 49ers. Then at some point it becomes Detroit. I don't think Philly ever fully took possession of full Super Bowl odd favorites. I'm going by Vegas odds here. Uh, the Bills were in there.
They
It's
did.
them to, back and forth and around. And the Chiefs get possession of it for like 1 week. I think when they became 15-1. Then the
Mhm.
playoffs start, and it's back to the Lions again. Well, I was definitely rooting for her. I feel bad because I think it
Yeah.
was just that's a different story. They lost because of injuries really this year. This was like kind of their year window.
Hmm.
I don't know. But the point is, it's a very disrespected team if you look at it. And if you really look at how good they've been since they got Hopkins and now they have Brown
Hmm.
back, and you look at their offense, and they put on arguably their two best regular season offensive games. I would say their two best were the last two games of the season, not kind of the last one, where they had
Sure.
Hollywood Brown, who was supposed to be their number one addition. But that's kind of all just swept away. And it doesn't help that they played a playoff game and everybody's saying, "Oh, it's the refs." It's also Saturday, 4 o'clock. It's the first game. You got to forget because then you go to Sunday's game, and it's like that's what all your eyes are. It's funny. 24 hours later, it's kind of just forgotten. Like, oh well, who cares? They were doing whatever. It's Taylor Swift. The refs is this. I think they're the better team. They have home
Hmm.
field. They definitely have the better coach. I still think Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback. Some people are like, oh, it's Josh Allen. I think they're the better defense. Definitely the better defense. I think they win
Wow.
probably, let's say 27-24.
I like that score. And yeah, I mean, look, they're 2-point favorites. People just want new. I don't understand why these Chiefs are so hated, but I think it's because they lose guys like Tariq Hill and it they don't lose a beat, They just keep rolling. I mean, look at Patty Mahomes' career. 2017, he lost his first game. That wasn't even a real season. 2018, threw 50 touchdowns, 12 picks, 5,100 yards. Lost in the AFC Championship game to the Patriots. Tom Brady kills him. Next year, they won the Super Bowl versus San Francisco 49ers. The next year, they lost the Super Bowl to Brady in Tampa. Got mollywopped. Patty Mahomes couldn't even throw a touchdown that game, and he threw two picks. Then the next year, they lost in the AFC Championship game to Joe Burrow, who's an absolute phenomenal quarterback. Patty threw three touchdowns and two picks that game, so it wasn't his best game, but he's only lost three postseason games. And then obviously they're on a three-peat potentially. These next 3 years, they beat Philadelphia Eagles 2022 and they beat the San Francisco 49ers 2023, and they could easily beat the Eagles again, this year. I thought this whole year the AFC would win. I kept thinking the Ravens would like kind of turn it up, and Lamar with Derrick Henry having potentially two of the best players in the world on the same field. I thought it'd be really hard to stop them. With the snow, I didn't really even think that would be a problem because I thought Derrick Henry would just get fed.
Mhm.
And I don't know why, but he wasn't. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, the Lions lost because Jared Goff threw three picks. And the Ravens lost because Lamar Jackson threw a pick and fumbled the ball. And Josh Allen's been perfect. Um, Josh Allen actually has done really well versus the Chiefs.
Mhm.
He's thrown nine touchdowns, one pick, similar to Patty, who's thrown nine touchdowns, zero picks. But like Josh Allen has lost in the past because of his like neediness to like show off his skills.
Yeah.
And I think if they rely on him and just get a bunch of dump offs to cook, like they got a shot, but I can't bet against Kelsey and and Patrick Mahomes. I can't do it. Um, Now the Bills are plus 24 in turnover differential this year. And I think Von Miller is going to have a fantastic game and be part of that. You know, Obviously going back to Patrick Mahomes, postseason success, all three of those games, he threw a bunch of picks. And at the end of the game, it's hard to win when you throw two or three interceptions. I think the Lions, transitioning a little bit to the NFC, I think the
Mhm.
Lions played fine, but three picks is just too much to overcome. And honestly, I thought Jaden Daniels was going to lose to Baker. Baker's having a phenomenal
I
year.
did
I
too.
thought Jaden would like dip a little bit. He's a rookie. We've never seen a rookie be this good. Jane Daniels just keeps throwing 300 yards and it seems so easy for him. And they're giving him difficult plays. Like they're letting him do absolutely anything. Like I'm looking at the game, I rewatched it this morning and I'm like, this doesn't even feel like an upset. And obviously, the Lions have missed a lot of players on defense, and they keep losing more players. And Washington completely revamped their squad. Dan Quinn's done a phenomenal job. They brought in Bobby Wagner, Dante Fowler Jr., Marcus Lattimore. McLaurin's been around for a little while now.
Yeah.
Jane Daniels, obviously, the biggest addition. I just like, why were we so surprised that Washington did this? Is it purely based on Jaden being a rookie and being so slender and thinking he would just get knocked out eventually?
Well, I think there's a couple answers there. To Detroit specifically, that game, and I do want to focus on the playoff run that included Tampa because I thought Tampa was going to win too. I do think we got a little overzealous thinking they're back because they did so well against Minnesota in that last game. And it was like, oh, their defense is that's 9 points. And I don't want to throw shade at Sam Darnold because I think he had a really great year. I would have put him
Oh,
top 10 MVP finisher,
I
maybe like
know.
seventh overall.
So
But
sad.
a little bit of pumpkin mode there. He doesn't, he plays a bad game. Oh, Detroit gives up 9 points. But you forget the previous four games, Detroit had the worst defense in the NFL. They were going to 390 passing yards a game. They were getting destroyed. The defense got too injured. I think they ended with 18 defenders on IR, like a record or something. And we didn't realize that, wait a minute, this Washington team is hot. They've won
Hmm.
six in a row. They're scoring at a crazy high pace. How is Detroit going to stop them?
Hmm.
And once they took the lead, they had that crazy 28-point second quarter. Then you're taking away Detroit's best weapon, which I would argue their best single weapon is not a player, it's the offensive line. If that was a player, normally we look at offensive line
Sure.
units.
Gibbs still
He,
cooked.
yeah,
He was fine.
he was
He ran
cooking, but they
seven
had
and a
the
half
best.
yards a carry.
Yeah, and you imagine if it was a closer game, how much he could have cooked. Like, what could have he done if it was a tie
Sure.
game or maybe they were up?
Yeah, they need to force it
So
down.
they reach a point where they're down 14, and it's hard to come back from that.
Hmm.
A couple key plays. You look at the golf fumble when they were 7-3.
Hmm.
Detroit scores there. Maybe they go up 10-3 or even 14. I think that definitely changes the course. Now you can rely more on your running game. Even as a shootout, you could stay more with the running game, which was doing great. And, the Jameson Williams throw. I don't know. That's
Mm,
the problem with the tricky plays. I love trick plays, fans love trick
sure,
plays,
sure.
all that is, you know, if you give the ball to a running back or receiver, they're gonna throw it because they don't get to throw the ball. It's like it's exciting. Like, oh, they're gonna throw the ball. It doesn't matter double coverage, whatever. They're unlikely to be like, let me just throw this out of bounds. It's not there. So you got to be careful with a trick play because it can be awesome, but it could also be a disaster. Because if the guy's open, wow, touchdown 60 yards out, and we've seen Detroit do it out all season,
Sure.
crazy trick plays. But open or not, you could see James Williams was throwing that ball no matter what. He was
Hmm.
never thought about throwing it out of bounds or taking a sack or whatever. That was
Hmm.
being thrown, and it ends up being the biggest throw of the season for your team by your wide receiver.
Yeah, it's
No,
tough.
crazy. Washington has a cheat code. They're that annoying kid you play in Madden that never punts. It's like if you're really against them, you end up being angry yourself, almost like you're playing a game. I was rooting for Detroit, and Washington's a fun team to root for too. I didn't have like a super rooting interest. I'm not from any of these cities or anything. But I'm
Yeah.
like, I see Detroit win a Super Bowl, a team that's known as like a punching bag of the NFL. But you
Yeah,
have to
but
admit,
Washington hasn't been in the NFC Championship game in 33 years. Yet everybody acts
now it's
like
just Dallas.
the Lions, right? I love it. I mean, as a Giants fan, I'm sure you're fine with that too.
I mean, did
Um,
you see that stat? Washington is they're 6 for 9 on fourth downs in the playoffs now, the two games combined. And that goes
okay.
66%, 2/3. That's downgrade from the regular season. The regular season, they led the NFL. They were 82% on fourth down. Like they figured out the cheat code that basically you're 4th and 3, maybe even you could say 4th and 5. They never punt. They just keep going for it. And it's when they have
Sure.
4 downs just to get a first down, it's really, really hard to stop them.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, the way obviously Matthew Stafford's a different caliber quarterback than Jaden Daniels, but maybe he's not. Maybe Jaden Daniels is really this guy. But the Eagles have shown all year that they are weak in the secondary. They're you could throw on them. Losing N'Kobe Dean is going to be such a killer, and they've missed Brandon Graham for a while. But the Eagles, I mean, so Washington kind of revamped their whole team, mainly on the defense. Like the Eagles brought in a bunch of new defensive players. Their defense is so much better than it was last year, but they've been pretty hot. I mean, all these teams are pretty much like the best we've ever seen them. Eagles, like it's their second 14 win team. In
Mhm.
2022, they also had 14 wins, and look, they lost the Super Bowl. We already talked about Patrick Mahomes. I feel like as I'm like putting together like the history, everybody links to the Chiefs. Like everybody, it's like, how did they link to the Chiefs? And yet, obviously, the Commanders, they were one of the worst teams in the world last year, and I don't. Obviously, you can't doubt Jaden anymore, but I, I don't know. I can't see them winning. I can't. I mean, I know Eagles have like weaknesses, and obviously, like, yeah, they can't stop the throw, and they're really not throwing it well. Hurts is hurt yet again, and I feel like that's every single week. AJ Brown hasn't really gotten cooked. He's not finding his flow yet, but Saquon rushing for 200 seems like, oh yeah, like another Sunday, like it's no big deal. And the way Gibbs, took care of the Commanders, I imagine Saquon's going to have a wonderful game again. I mean, the Eagles pretty much won versus the Rams because of three monster rushes, one by Hurts, two by Saquon, and that's all they needed. I would be shocked if the Commanders win, much less shocked if the Bills win, but KC versus Philly just seems like inevitable again.
It kind of does. And obviously it's like it seems close on that Chief Bill side, but because I think that's going to happen, and I don't know how the Commanders can beat the Eagles. I mean, I'm sure that obviously it's the way we play, but they got to run a lot. They're better when
Mhm.
they don't throw, and that's it's not an insult. You look at Jalen Hurts; he's only covered his passing line going back to the regular season and the playoffs combined. One of the last 12 games is over
Yeah.
under on yards. That's a separate category for betters out there. It's a good bet. Take his under on yards. He's not throwing the ball, but they're playing better.
Mhm.
And what I think is interesting is take a look at the playoffs. You mentioned that they made the Super Bowl 2 years ago,
Mhm.
right? He only averaged 193 yards per game in the playoffs that year. This year in the playoffs, obviously smaller sample size, he's averaging 130 yards, really low. But
Sure.
in the year in between, when they kind of fell off, they opened up 10-1, they fall off. That one playoff game they lost to Tampa, he had 250 yards. Point being that when he throws less, they play better. So you could see a direct correlation to actually lower yards better. The bye week, that was a big thing. They kind of changed their offense. He's throwing less, but only one of the last 12 games, he beat his over-under line by Vegas. And yet, in that stretch, they lost, 2 games? And I think one they weren't trying, basically, in the end. So, like, they play much better that way. They got a CJ Con, and now has Jaden Daniels become that keep the quarterback off the field guy. Like people talk about Mahomes, like,
Oh,
oh, you got to
yeah.
keep him off the field. Now Jaden Daniels at a rookie is at the level where you're talking about how do we keep him off the field? Well, we always run the ball. And you got Saquon, you got this offensive line. Washington's not great against the run. They're not the worst. They're
Mhm.
not great. I mean, seems like the recipe is there for a win as long as they don't do anything stupid. I think that they got it there.
I mean, comparing that to the college football championship, that's what Notre Dame tried to do. It took them almost 10 minutes to score their opening drive, and that was their major goal. But unfortunately, with that, like all of a sudden, it took them 10 minutes, and their quarterback's vomiting on the sideline after one drive. So they were just like absolutely exhausted, and Ohio State scores quick and just keeps up the momentum. I feel like Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs have similar game plans.
Mhm.
And on the opposite side, like if Jaden and Josh Allen don't like absolutely dominate, like their team doesn't really have a chance to win. Jaden Daniels really needs to rush the ball, in their win versus the Eagles, which that was a game where Jalen Hurts only threw four
Yeah,
passes. He
get
got
out
hurt
early.
early. And then it was an absolute shootout. Jaden Daniels throws five touchdowns, ton of yards. I think they won 36-33. But he also, threw five touchdowns and rushed for 81 yards. But in their loss, the Eagles, was able to manage the running game a lot more, and he only ran for 18. It's similar to Josh Allen. Like this guy uses his legs, and he's bigger than any linebacker, and he's bigger than literally everybody on the field except for the line. So as long as he gets past the line, he can just demolish over anybody. And here's a guy that was overlooked, like no college even wanted him, and then so he's so easy to root for. And I feel like as I was talking to people about football this year, like everybody wanted a Lions Bills matchup. The Bills losing those four straight Super Bowls in the 90s. That those were some of their best seasons. And now they're matching that again with a 13-win season. These teams are having some of their best seasons. And it's really exciting to see. Now, I feel like this Sunday could be a couple of blowouts, but look, I mean, these teams are hot. I'm sure they're going to be highly contested games, and all you need is a couple of turnovers to flip the luck. But
Yeah.
I got to trust the Eagles and the Chiefs, mainly the Chiefs. Honestly, if I had to pick, I feel like it's the Chiefs, season yet
Yeah.
again. They're going to do it.
Um,
Andy Reid's getting another championship, and good for him.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned turnovers. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the team that has won the turnover battle has won every game in the playoffs this year.
It's pretty
And
much football.
uh, and
I
the funny
believe
thing
that.
about that is that the Chiefs actually had a bad turnover ratio for a good team like this year.
Yeah.
But in the playoffs, they don't turn the ball over.
hmm
And they stopped turning the ball over even late. Patrick Mahomes hasn't turned over the ball. I believe it's up to 8 games after the last one now without an interception. So it's like they stop turning the ball over, and when they don't turn the ball over, they don't lose. If you look at the record, the Chiefs' record, it as a playoffs regular season combined, when they win the turnover battle, they're undefeated. When they tie the turnover battle, they win 60% of the game. And when they lose the turnover battle, they win 50% of the games. That's since Mahomes has been in the league. So it's like you have to at least tie the turnover battle to have a chance. And even if you win it, it's like 50-50. For most teams, you lose the turnover battle, it's like a maybe 25% chance of winning. Something pretty low. I don't have that number in front of me. But so I feel like the turnovers has really been the theme. And there's a little bit of I feel like there's a comeback of the running back. And I know the Chiefs don't have a dominant running back, so it's hard to think of that way.
Absolutely.
But you look at what's happening now, and I'll throw in running game because these are all athletic quarterbacks. You know, who's the slowest quarterback here is still somebody that can scramble easily. You know,
Hmm.
there's no statues here at all. Is we've been talking wide receivers for like the last 5 years. It's all wide receivers. It's throwing the ball. It's explosion.
Hmm.
You look at the Chiefs. No Tyreek Hill. They get better.
Hmm.
You look at the Bills. They get rid of Stephon Diggs. They get better. You look at the Eagles. They get Saquon plus just overall they run more. They're at the best they've ever been. I would argue this team looks better than the team that made the Super Bowl. I don't know if they win, but they look better. You know, Jaden Daniels obviously is running a lot, and so they have running through him and the running game.
Yeah.
And you can see it's a lot of running, less passing, less interceptions, less turnovers. That's what's winning this year. That's kind of the theme of this year is more running, less turnovers, and you win. This is not a fireworks show playoffs on any team around us. But Washington's scoring, but not in that fireworks show.
No, I mean, look, they got Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, and Jaden Daniels runs the ball really well, and that's why I felt the Ravens would have such a better shot. You know, bringing in Derrick Henry, I was like, all right, like I got to take this team really seriously now. And trust me, when it comes to fantasy football, I wanted James Cook more than any player. I had him on
Mhm.
both my teams, and he carried me to success. But Derrick Henry was the dude this year. It was Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. And I was like, all right, like if this truly is the year of the running back, like these are going to be the two teams to meet in the championship. And I just still don't understand like why they didn't feed Derrick Henry enough. Like the first half, I think he got like 25 yards or something. He finished with like 80, 85 maybe. But that's not a good game. Like these guys could easily get 150, no problem. It doesn't matter if it's snowing. Like Shady McCoy has taught us many things that the snow is almost better for the offensive player because they know where they're going. So it's easy to get your foot in and then explode and get past that guy. I just, yeah, it's absolutely the year of the running back. I mean, AJ Brown is almost not needed. He's a bit of a decoy right now. And Amari Cooper on the Bills didn't even get a catch last week. And he's one of their best players. It doesn't really matter who Josh Allen's throwing to. The absence of Diggs opens up the variety of other options. So you don't know who it's going to. I do love Josh Allen, but like, yeah, if they were playing a worse team, I would give them a lot more credit. But this is one of the greatest teams we've ever seen, and their defense is tremendous. I mean, yeah, I know the Bills are plus 24 in turnover differential this year, but, you know, can they bank on that versus Mahomes? Like, I think Mahomes is going to understand, like, if I give the ball away, I lose. If I keep
Yeah.
on to it, we win. And he threw less touchdowns and less yards than any other year in his career. They weren't looking to just explode and turn up like he did in his first year, that 50 touchdown season. He's like, all right, I showed everybody who I could be. Now I'm gonna like just make sure we win. And if I'm corny, it doesn't matter. Travis Kelsey could be the fun guy on our team, and similar with that, everybody's like, oh, he's washed and Taylor Swift is ruining his career. But like the guy's still cooking. He only scored 3 touchdowns in the regular season, but I'm sure he would even succeed that, when it comes to the playoffs. He's absolutely dominating right now.
100%. And like, I mean, he's a different person in the playoffs. Because remember, last year was the Chiefs' worst team, particularly like regular season team. Everybody's going in. There's lots of doubts. This team is way better, almost twice as many wins at regular season. And last year he has a dominant player for him. It's like the playoff start isn't like, oh, he didn't play a great regular season. What's going on? Playoff start, 6-to-1 touchdown ratio, 100 quarterback rating, looks amazing. He had the couple bad picks in the Super Bowl, but otherwise almost flawless. And still, they had a flawless second half. What was it? They scored as many feasible points as you could score per possession in the second half. They had like one incompletion, basically a perfect game. You have Travis Kelsey, who's basically been hibernating through the regular season, and it's like now it's playoffs times, and it's like, oh, shock, there he is. He's had a record 14 straight games of playoff games, 14 straight playoff games of at least 70 yards. The second best all time is 8. In the regular season, he was
Sounds like a Tom
averaging
Brady
like
stat there.
50. Like his over under for game one, game he just had 117, was 50 yards because he had such a poor regular season. He had his worst regular season in catches, receptions, and touchdowns, receptions, yards, touchdowns.
Hmm.
And last year was his worst in all three categories. He just did even a little worse than last year. And last year's playoff, he had another monster playoff game. 3 straight games, and last year over 100 yards. First game this year over 100 yards. So you have to say, you can't be like, oh, regular season, he's washed, he's looking old. Yeah, he did look a little old in regular season. It's like a different player. It's a
Yeah.
completely different player.
It took him
With like
time
adding
too.
a all-pro tight end that almost wasn't on the roster for all intents and purposes during the regular season. You add that to this roster. You add Hollywood Brown. I know he did nothing in the first playoff game, but you saw some potential in those last 2 regular season games.
Yeah, but Xavier Worthy is good enough for that.
Exactly. And as a
So much
rookie, get that
speed.
rookie bump. You can see he's like playing his first 10 games. He's like, oh, not bad. And then you look at his last 7 to 8 games that he's been playing,
Hmm.
his numbers are night and day. They're way through the roof. And they're giving him the ball a lot
Yeah,
because it's not just the numbers, his target share is through the roof.
rookies talk about their first year like it's 2 years. Like the first half of the year before their bye is like their first year and they get revved up. And then they're like, all right, I understand what's happening. Plus, the second half of the season plays a lot different, a lot more physical, a lot more like colder games too, a lot more snow games. And I mean, I know it's not projected to be snowing, but those two Sunday snow games were incredible. I was so excited that second half of the Eagles game, watching the snow, and I'm like, oh, Eagles got this now, game over. And our whole
Mhm.
chat was telling me to shut up, stop jinxing us. I'm like, you think we have control? Get out of here. I'm like, the Eagles got this. They're done. And then Saquon just takes it to the house to clinch it. And that was just incredible. I mean, this guy, all right. So before we go, last thing. Obviously, I guess the Eagles are doing better, but do you feel Saquon, Derrick Henry, or somebody else was the biggest addition of their offseason?
Oh, wow. I think the obvious choice feels like Saquon, although
Hmm.
the only problem with that choice, the Eagles were not like a bad team last year. They had a bad ending. They were still a great team,
Hmm.
but I mean, I guess the real answer, and this I don't know if this is not what you probably wanted. You wanted an audition. Real answer is Jaden Daniels as a rookie pickup. That is the real answer.
See, that's
Is where
another.
Washington
That's
was
fair.
last year. Right? I could almost argue and out. I want to give an honorable mention to new ownership for Washington. Right?
Oh,
People,
dude,
I
this
mean, talk
team's
about
so much better.
draining the swamp in Washington. That was the drain. The drain happened
Yeah,
with the ownership there. I mean, that just shows you how the rotten tree produces rotten fruit.
sure.
You have bad ownership, your team can't do anything. You change that, and everything changes. It trickles down to GM, coach,
Mhm.
and then players. And just like that, you can change a team, which is why I feel bad for teams that have bad ownership. And separate question for another day is I worry about Joe Burrow's future because that ownership is terrible. So, like, Lamar, and I definitely think Lamar has some questions to prove, but Baltimore stable team, defense, ownership, so on. He'll get his eventually. Josh Allen, he'll get his eventually. I think they'll all always get one Super Bowl. Maybe Mahomes carries like 6, but Joe Burrow and bad ownership, it's really, really hard to win a Super Bowl when you have terrible ownership. So that is a worry for me for like off-season questions if you want to do.
Mahomes is
That's
already
my
in
worry.
that different category. The only, comparison he has right now is Tom Brady and his legacy. And of course, everybody's going to keep mentioning that. I mean, Tom Brady has 48 playoff appearances, and second place, I think, is like 24. Like, it's literally half. And Patrick Mahomes is already up to like 19, something like that. And obviously, he's super young. 2017 was his first year. That was only a few years ago. Um,
I think a nice comparable there is you mentioned earlier in this podcast how like everybody's rooting against the Chiefs. You see it, they have the map in these. I remember where popular like Instagram. It's like what state is rooting for who,
sure.
and it showed 2019 AFC Conference Championship game was Chiefs Patriots, and
Hmm.
the entire map was rooting for the Chiefs except for Massachusetts and I think Rhode Island. And now they show
Script is
Chiefs Bills.
flipped.
It's complete. It's the only states rooting for the Chiefs are Missouri and Kansas because Kansas City's right on the border there. But like
Hmm.
it's funny. So it's like, oh, back then not that long ago, relatively speaking, everybody's a Chiefs fan. Like, oh, take down Tom Brady, fresh blood. Mahomes is young and cool. Now it's like, God, I hate Mahomes. We need somebody young and cool. So,
Yeah, yawning cool. I mean, that's Jane Daniels, baby.
yeah,
Hurts is
he's
not
playing like
cool.
this in
Everybody
5 years.
thinks
They're
he's
like, yeah,
so lame. Uh, I mean, the Eagles are more of just a team. I mean, I hope that AJ Brown like actually genuinely likes Saquon. I know he could be a little jealous of it, and it's so funny like him reading the book, and then all of a sudden that book on the side, the book I think it was something intelligence, something like inner intelligence.
yeah,
That
absolutely.
was the number one book on Amazon. That weekend.
It was previously 53rd,000.
53rd thousand to number one. Look at what the NFL
But
does.
no, I'm not even lying. My dad ordered that book yesterday. He's like, "What's that book? What did I order it?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Dad, don't fall that for that." But
I mean, hey, good for that author.
yeah,
AJ Brown
something
better
else.
get a cut of that.
Yeah, he's the ultimate winner. The winner of ever. He's getting making more money, like by percentage wise, a bigger increase in money than any NFL player
Yeah.
bonus.
He's got to be happier than he was in
Boom,
Tennessee.
boom.
Speaking of one of the worst franchises, I mean, look, we'll save this for an off-season podcast, but I mean, us as football fans, we're pretty blessed. I mean, the Bears just hired a new coach, Ben Johnson. They got the Lions
Wow.
offensive coordinator. They're probably on the way up. As long as they could build that offensive line, and everybody thinks they're going to be amazing just because they have Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and a bunch of beautiful wide receivers. Like, you need to build the line first. Like, this is what
Yeah,
the Lions proved. Doesn't matter who you lose, as long as the lines are good, we're going to be stable. And then, the Lions, typically not a good franchise. The Commanders, typically not a good franchise. They're doing wonderful. I think bright futures ahead. Good luck to Jacksonville and Tennessee and the Jets and the Giants. But, most of the NFL is doing pretty good.
that's the beauty. That's what makes the NFL king. You look at Washington last year, this year, and they're like, "Oh, we're one game away from the Super Bowl." And last year, they're tire fire. It's the NFL sells hope better than any drug in the world. It's great. You got a bad team in the NBA, you can know we're going to be bad for the next 3 years. You can shoot out easily, project that number. NFL, any year, you could just flip it. It's the beauty.
Beautiful parody. All right, Nerdy Sports audience, thank you for joining us again. We will be back next week to recap the Chiefs and the Bills and the Eagles and the Commanders game, and then prepare ourselves for the Super Bowl. Sadly, there's only 3 more games left in the NFL season, but this is the best time. Thank you for joining us. And as always, Scotty,
Keep it nerdy.
keep it nerdy, nerds.